What is up, everyone? I am Gregory LaPerche. Today, we will be talking about my 10 favorite fantasy books that I read in the year 2021. And the only rule that I have for myself is no duplicate authors. So, 10 books, 10 authors. Most of these, if not all of these, are part of series. Yeah, in those cases, I'll be picking my favorite book from those respective series and talking about it a bit. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Number 10, The Burning White by Brent Weeks. So this is a 5-book series. This is the 5th book in the series. And I really liked this book and the way it closed everything out and the magic system. And there were so many characters in this series. It's very epic, and the world is just massive. The scope of everything is massive. The magic system, it is like a very hard magic system, basically. There's light, and different people with different skills can draft different colors from the light and make substances, and those substances do different things. Red substance is flammable, violet is invisible, and then green, yellow, and blue all are useful for building things mostly. You know, that part of the magic system is super straightforward, but as the books go on, there ends up being a lot more different types of magic and different colors that can be drafted that are outside of like the spectrum. And also a cool part of this magic system is the more you use the magic, the closer to death you get. So magic users usually die at the age of like 40 or so, but you can die at like 20 if you go like super hard and use all your magic. And using the magic affects your emotions a lot. And yeah, I just really like the series. I like the way this closes out most of the character arcs. You know, when there's so many characters, it can be kind of crazy to keep up with all of them, and I felt like for some of the characters introduced very early in the series, there was no like clear plan for where those characters were going to end up and how their arcs were going to conclude. So those characters I thought had worse endings, but like the more main characters, I liked their endings a lot more. And yeah, the writing style is a bit weird. I feel like you can pretty quickly determine whether or not you'll like the series by the first book. If you aren't really vibing with the writing style or the world, then I don't think you'll vibe with the series. But if you like those very hard magic systems, I think you will like the series. And, you know, just the magic alone, it has that cool factor, you know? The first 3 books in this series are my first 3 book reviews on this channel because, you know, I liked those books so much. And it's not even that I liked them so much, I just wanted to like talk about them, I guess, because I definitely like other books more than this. As you can tell, it's only number 10 on the list. But yeah, it was certainly just a great introduction to very epic fantasy. Moving along, next we've got Starsight by Brandon Sanderson. This is book 2 in the Skyward series. And yeah, here's book 1, and we're following around Spensa, who is training to be a pilot. And this colony needs a lot of good pilots because they're constantly under attack by these spaceship type things, and people need to defend against those. But the problem is Spensa, there's a lot of shade thrown at her because her father was a traitor, basically. And you don't know exactly what happened, but her father died while being a traitor, and everyone sees her as like the daughter of a traitor and someone who's not trustworthy because of that. And yeah, I like the second book because it opens up a lot more. We get a lot more answers. We did get a lot of answers in book 1 as well, but book 2 expands a lot on those answers, and we see other cultures. And yeah, I'm pretty excited to read book 3, which I have, and book 4 comes out later this year, and there's a bunch of short stories as well. Oh, also in my review of Starsight, I did a very Dangus Greg thing to do where I talked about the book and I like convinced myself to like the book more than I did before I started recording the review. But even like looking back, I still like the additions to the world that were brought forward in this book, and I'm excited to continue on with Spensa's journey and see what is in store for her. Up next, we've got a series of novellas Murderbot, All Systems Read. This is the first book. I've read the first 3 novellas, and the first one was my favorite, but I think all 3 are good. They just kind of follow similar structures, I guess. But basically, we've got Murderbot. Murderbot is a bot who works for a company, and we get Murderbot's first-person perspective on everything, and the company assigns Murderbot to work for various groups that are doing various mining projects on different planets. And the Murderbot is very antisocial, and in this world, bots are seen as kind of like not friends. They're like tools, they're instruments. But also in this world, bots have like their own thoughts and their own desires. And Murderbot's greatest leisure time desire is to watch soap operas, basically. And oh man, it's just so funny. Murderbot's always like, I gotta finish this work and then I can watch 12 hours of soap operas straight. But the problem kind of is that the crew that Murderbot is working with, they don't have like the same thoughts on bots as a lot of the rest of society does. And they actually treat Murderbot with a bit more respect. And the bot's like, I don't know what to do with this, but I do not want to be your friends. I'm antisocial, and I would like to continue watching my soap operas. Thank you very much. And I think we all have a little bit of Murderbot inside of us, or at least any of you introverts. I think maybe some of you can relate. But yes, it is not long. It is solid. It has pretty well fleshed out societal structures, and it does so in not a whole lot of time. Also, something I remember saying in my review for this book is that it doesn't use the word freedom. Murderbot is more or less a slave for this company, and the thought of freedom goes around Murderbot's head, but the word freedom is not used. So I think that was like a very interesting yet also very intentional linguistic choice, because some words like freedom, liberty, how do you describe those words without using those words? Like, try it. What would you say? Like, oh, I want to do what I want. That's what freedom is. Like, I don't know. It's definitely like more broad than that. And actually, probably depending on all of our cultures, we may have different thoughts on what freedom should or shouldn't be. So yeah, I love that sort of world building, and I just thought that was very unique. And there's probably a lot of other things like that in these books that just flying right over my totally oblivious head. But I've got to read like the 4th and 5th novella in this series because, you know, I really liked the first 3 so much. And yeah, hopefully it gets better too. You never know. Up next, we've got Boom, Jade City by Fonda Lee. This is a book that you've probably heard of because everyone loves the Greenbone saga. Jade Legacy just came out a month ago, and so far a lot of people have loved it, and I have not read it yet, but I really like Jade City. Jade War, I like a lot as well. I just like it less than Jade City. But basically, we're in this world, and Jade gives certain people superpowers, and there's 2 main mafias in this city who have the most jade and the most like resources, own the most territory. And yeah, we follow around the No Peak clan, and they are slightly less powerful than the Mountain clan. So how are they going to get their power back, and how are they not going to get taken over by the Mountain clan? Those are, you know, commonly occurring questions. And also a lot of the leadership in Jade City is new to being the leaders of the clan, and their grandfather is kind of getting old and senile, but he's still alive. But yeah, it's definitely a transitionary process for them. And it's also a transitionary process for their country as well. And that's definitely something that gets talked about more as the series goes on. But I do really like a lot of the characters in this book, and I like how they develop. And even the like very unlikable characters I love to hate. And there's one character that's the perfect, obnoxious teenager who does all the worst things imaginable. And then the leader of the Mountain Clan is also just exceptional. Lon, Shay, and Hilo all have different styles, and they're basically the people who are going to be in charge of the No Peak clan in the next generation. So I really like how unique they are from each other. Everyone seems to have a favorite of those characters, and how they approach the mafia war with the Mountain Clan. So yeah, I felt like this first book flew by for me. It's not like super fast paced, but for me it felt fast paced. Like the family drama hooked me pretty quickly. Jade War was slower for me. I was not as big of a fan of some of the characters, and I kind of felt like they had somewhat repetitive story arcs and character arcs, I guess. But I have pretty high hope for Jade Legacy, and yeah, I should be reading it at some point. We will see exactly when. But yeah, a lot of these books have sequels that I need to get to right now. 7, 8, and 9 all have books that I need to read in them. So we'll see. We'll see what I get to and when I get to it. Up next, boom, Red Rising, Pierce Brown. And I'm reading Golden Sun Book 2 right now, and I'm just remembering all of the reasons why I loved Red Rising. And it's mostly because it's fast-paced, and the world is great. The tyrannical villains are just great. They kind of have a very simple sort of society in terms of like, oh, this is hierarchy, this is power, and like might makes right, basically, in this society. And we've got Darrow, who's the main character who tells this story, is a Red, and the Reds work in the mines on Mars. But the Golds run society, and the Golds are basically feudal lords, and the Reds are their serfs. So there's definitely that underlying mystery for me. How did we regress from democracy into this futuristic feudalism? The world is basically like if Elon Musk got exactly what he wanted. And yeah, this brought me back to a lot of feelings I got when I read The Hunger Games, in terms of just fast-paced, very, like, well done, also first person. And this book just kept making me want to read more and more, even though it was fast-paced, because I knew if I read, like, another 20 pages or whatever, a lot of stuff would happen. It's not like this big setup book, like, whatever, Stormlight Archive or whatever, which I like those books too, but sometimes I just need the fast-paced book. And when the fast-paced book is done very well, I love it. I just can't get enough of it. So Red Rising, Pierce Brown, you guys have probably heard of it, but if you haven't, check it out. All right, moving along, number 5, The Ember Blade by Chris Wooding. This book, man, I love it. I did a live show for this book with Kate very recently, and this is also a book where the more I talk about it, the more I like it, kind of like I said with Starsight, because there's so many things in this world, so many things going on. And on the cover it says, Lord of the Rings for the modern generation, an epic world full of history, depth, and adventure. Man, like everything's compared to Lord of the Rings, right? But this actually feels like Lord of the Rings. It has a lot of the tropes, but the tropes are all done in a very fresh and unique way, and man, I just love it. And the characters are what bring this book home for me. Tell me if you haven't heard a synopsis like this before. But we start in a small fishing village, and there are 2 boys, they're friends, and one of them has more power than the other one. And the people of this small fishing village are basically being colonized by a much stronger, more powerful empire. And there have been rebellions. The rebellions overall have not worked. So these people in this fishing village are oppressed. But one of the 2 boys has a parent who started to help out the invaders. So his family got more power and got special treatment, while the other one lives in more abject poverty. But that doesn't matter too much to them for the most part. But there's an interesting friendship dynamic there because of that sort of class difference. But yes, something happens, and then they go on a quest, and the quest takes so many twists and turns. Oh man, I just love all of the characters they meet. They meet some amazing characters, and I can't even talk too much about the characters, but a lot of the characters feel like they fit a specific D&D archetype, and D&D characters, always fun. These characters had that sort of funness, but also were very serious in terms of their interactions with each other and, worldviews. And sometimes, like this feeling in D&D where you all make a character, you all show up, and it's like, man, how is like a chaotic neutral rogue going to get along with this, lawful good paladin? And this book definitely has some of that in terms of characters having different morals, having different reasons for doing things. But what unites them is the hatred of the Empire and the will and desire for freedom. And yeah, I'm excited to continue on with this series. Book 2, I think, might come out maybe in 6 months or something. But you can definitely read this and get a very satisfied standalone experience, in my opinion at least. I feel like you could read this as a standalone and be happy. Ember Blade, Lord of the Rings for the modern generation. And that is not too much hype. I think that's a fair statement. Up next, number 4, The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. This book, The Ember Blade, and Red Rising all swapped around a lot in my head, but this is the order I settled on. And this book, man, has it got history and a very rich world, similar to the Ember Blade. This is based on Chinese history and things that happened, 2,000 years ago, which I know next to nothing about. And I don't know exactly how closely this follows the history, but there's definitely some unique elements. Obviously, this isn't like a fiction book, it's a fantasy book. So does that mean there's dragon and magic and stuff? No, not really. But what there is these steampunk sort of inventions that add a very unique experience for me, at least. So, similar to the Ember Blade, the Grace of Kings has this empire, and the empire is super powerful. And the reason they're powerful is because they have airships, and they can just drop things from airships, and, they can decimate any army or, bomb any city or do all this horrible stuff. So like in Ember Blade, the Empire, super powerful, super oppressive, and that's where we begin. So this book is told over a number of years, kind of from a documentary perspective almost. We follow, a lot of the main characters, and we follow, the Empire, the progression of the Empire, rebellions within the Empire, different rebellions, what works, what doesn't work, how rebellions are quelled, how rebellions succeed. And that was super interesting and awesome for me. What comes with those sorts of documentary style, like History Channel type things, is not necessarily what you'd see in every fantasy book, because the battle scenes aren't super long. It'll be like, this is what happened before the battle, this is what happened after the battle, but there's not too much sword fighting. Also, when a character shows up, we get a lot of relevant backstory about the character right after they show up, which I thought was great, because let's say there's a character that you need to talk about in chapter 40. Some authors would write like multiple POV and give them like 3 chapters before chapter 40, and then they show up and do the thing that they are needed to do for the plot. But this book, it's like, no, why would we do that? We can just give the backstory right after we introduce the character. And those were actually some of my favorite chapters, getting the backstories of random characters throughout the Empire who all are from different places and have different backstories. And yeah, I'm super excited to read the next 2 books in the series, and book 4, the final book in the series, should be coming out in 3 months maybe. So yeah, I want to be ready for that, and I hope I like book 2 and 3 more than this book. I hear they're actually better, so we'll see if that's true or not. The bar is very high with this. Also, this, similar to the Ember Blade, is another book where you can read the first one and chill, I think. In my opinion, at least. Although I haven't read the second book yet. If you like to take your time going through series, this is a good series for that. Number 3, Ergonomics by J. Zachary Pike. This book I really enjoyed. This is kind of a satire book, and it takes the premise, what if we had modern economy mechanisms like markets or stock markets and, insurance and stuff like that? What if we had that, but in a stereotypical medieval fantasy world? It takes that idea and satirizes it so much and takes it to levels where I was just laughing my butt off at various points. There's like a chosen one trope, but this makes fun of the chosen one trope because they're the 41st group of people to be the chosen group of people or something. And it's just like, why do you keep doing this? But it also satirizes a sort of economy where adventurers go out on quests and the backers of those quests buy shares, and if the quest is successful, the backers of the quest get the loot. So there's like that level of satire. And then there's also Dungeons and Dragons satire, where, or I guess you could say just any RPG satire, like, I don't know, Skyrim or anything like that, where you like level up your skills, but the leveling is very explicit. It's like, oh, I'm a level 3 warrior because I got my level 3 warrior card from the Warriors Guild. And then there's like Thieves Guilds and just all this stuff. Yeah, I laughed a lot. But the jokes early on got a little bit in the way of the book having an actual plot. But once the plot gets going, I love it personally. And there was actually like emotions in here. Like, I'm like, what am I feeling? This is supposed to be a joke, not like a good actual story. But yeah, this has all of those societal critiques that I love in my books, whether they be nonfiction, fantasy, sci-fi. But it has those critiques while making me laugh and also having a good fantasy story. So all 3 boxes of anything that I would ever want are checked off, and good characters too. So boom. Ergonomics, number 3. I've got to read book 2, Son of a Lich, later this year, and then book 3 I know is coming out, so I think I'll read book 2 closer to when book 3 comes out. Number 2, The Black Coast by Mike Brooks. I recently talked about reading the sequel to this book in one of my wrap-ups, and I did not like the sequel at nearly as much, but book 1, it has all the things I love. Good characters, interesting cultures mashing together in unique ways. And, like a theme on this list is I'm not necessarily looking for like these awesome, amazing battle scenes. I want the cultures of different parts of different worlds causing tension in ways that I find to be entertaining, but also enlightening and informative. And that just raises the stakes of everything else for me so much more. Like, if a character's being a butthead, then I see the character as more evil because they're on the wrong side of an important world societal issue. But if they're being good, I find them to be even more valiant and more heroic because they're doing the right thing, not just for themselves, but for the people and for society as a whole. And yeah, basically in this book, we've got raiders on the sea, and they come to this castle place, and the castle place is like, man, we don't like raiders. The raiders always show up and steal all our stuff. But this time the raiders show up and they're like, actually, we're refugees and we would like to seek asylum in your lands. Is this possible? And the castle people are like, no, you can't do that because like we don't really want you to, and you've stolen from us the last 30 years. And the raiders are like, but pretty please. And then that's where a lot of cultural controversies come through. And also there are dragons. Look at the dragon. It's an awesome dragon. Also, I like the Galapagos Island sort of feel of the dragons in this book. These are like razor claw dragons, and they're like little and fast and like have claws and slash things. But then there's like bigger dragons who are tough and you can ride them into battle and stuff. And there's dragons with wings, dragons with no wings. It's like birds on the Galapagos Islands. Different types of beaks, different sizes, different shapes, different foods, all of those sorts of things. But dragons, so much better. So boom, The Black Coast, Mike Brooks, number 2. And then number 1, I'm sure you can guess what series and author I'm talking about, but The Hod King by Josiah Bancroft. This is my favorite book in the Books of Babel series, which is the favorite series that I've read this year. Book 1 wasn't like an instant favorite for me, but when we get to book 2, we get more characters, we get more points of view. I just start to love the world more, I love the characters more, and I love the struggle more. And it's also very unique plot-wise. Basically, a husband and wife go to this tower for a vacation, and they hear so many good things about this tower, and it's fun and whatever, exciting, and it's like their honeymoon or whatever. So they think they'll have fun, but they get separated almost immediately, and the only contingency plan they made for getting separated was that they would meet at the top of the tower. So Senlin is kind of trying to rise the tower and see if that's where his wife is. Yeah, every tower has a different government, different system, different society, and a lot of the different levels are isolated from each other in this very tall tower. Senlin is always looking for his wife, but he definitely gets, we can say, distracted by other things, and he is a very distractible person. He's kind of naive, sort of, and he quickly realizes that everything he read about the Tower of Babel is untrue. Total lies. And he keeps going back to this guidebook of pure lies, and he just keeps getting more and more bamboozled. But I just love where this book and the series goes. Book 4, amazing. Definitely not the best final book in terms of answering everyone's questions, but I was satisfied. And I remember there was a point in the 4th book where I'm like, has Josiah Bancroft made the Avengers mistake? Because you know how, like, the Avengers movies, they have all these characters that everyone loves, and there's so many characters, and they all get like 5.5 seconds of screen time because there's just too many characters for any one character to have a particularly fleshed out story. And that's kind of what happened towards the end. It's like, there's just too many characters to follow, but I love them all, but I wish we had more time with all of them. It's kind of like a weird complaint. Stop writing good characters, Josiah Bancroft. But yes, I just have so many good things to say about this series, and I've got a lot of videos on this series, so definitely check them out if you're interested. So yeah, boom, there it is, my top 10 books of 2021, and what I'm learning about myself is I need to make time to read some of the sequels to these books. Finish series, Greg. Finish series. So yeah, I don't know if you guys are struggling with that as well, but hopefully you guys have read some of these, or if not, hopefully I gave you some good recommendations. And yeah, like, comment, and subscribe, and tell me what your favorite read of 2021 is in the comments below, and see you guys next time.